Carl Gustav Jung's Modern Man in Search of a Soul, published in 1933, is one of the foundational texts of analytical psychology. It is a collection of essays that articulates Jung's divergence from Freudian psychoanalysis and lays the groundwork for his own psychological theories. This work is not just a treatise on clinical psychology, but also a philosophical and spiritual exploration of the human condition in the modern era. It grapples with the crises of identity, meaning, and spirituality that Jung believed were central challenges of the 20th century and remain relevant today. The context of the modern man. At the heart of Modern Man in Search of a Soul is Jung's conviction that modern people are suffering from a loss of connection with the deeper, symbolic layers of the psyche. According to Jung, the rapid development of science, rationalism, and materialism in the West led to a crisis of meaning. Whereas traditional societies relied on religion, myth, and ritual to provide psychological balance and a sense of identity, modern individuals are often adrift, alienated from their inner selves. Jung suggests that modern man is plagued by a psychological and spiritual malaise, which he characterizes as a soul sickness. This condition is not necessarily pathological in the clinical sense, but rather a deep existential discontent. The individual feels disconnected from society, history, and the unconscious aspects of the psyche. Modern people often seek superficial distractions or rigid ideologies to fill the void, but these are poor substitutes for authentic spiritual and psychological integration. Analytical psychology versus Freudian psychoanalysis. In several chapters of the book, Jung contrasts his theory of analytical psychology with the psychoanalytic ideas of Sigmund Freud. While Freud emphasized the role of sexual drives and the personal unconscious in shaping human behavior, Jung proposed a broader, more inclusive model. He introduced the concept of the collective unconscious, a shared repository of archetypes and symbolic images common to all humanity. Jung argued that the psyche is not merely a storehouse of repressed desires, but also contains positive potential for growth and transformation. He believed that the unconscious has a compensatory function, helping to balance the conscious ego by providing dreams, fantasies, and symbols that can guide the individual toward wholeness. This process, which he called individuation, is central to his psychology. It is the journey of becoming one's true self by integrating all aspects of the personality. The role of dreams and symbols. A key theme in Modern Man in Search of a Soul is the significance of dreams. For Jung, dreams are not random or meaningless, but expressions of the unconscious that carry messages from the inner world. By interpreting dreams through symbolic analysis, individuals can gain insights into their conflicts, desires, and hidden potentials. Unlike Freud, who saw dreams as veiled expressions of repressed wishes, Jung viewed them as natural attempts at self-regulation and spiritual orientation. He emphasized that dream symbols are not universal codes, but must be understood in the context of the individual's personal and cultural background. Still, he identified recurring archetypes, such as the shadow, the anima animus, and the wise old man, which he believed arise from the collective unconscious and appear across cultures. Symbols, in Jung's framework, are the language of the unconscious. Religion, myth, and art are filled with such symbols, which can act as bridges between the conscious ego and the deeper layers of the psyche. Modern man, in losing touch with these symbolic systems, suffers a kind of spiritual starvation. The Spiritual Crisis of the West. Jung dedicates a significant portion of the book to exploring the spiritual vacuum of Western civilization. He contends that Christianity, once a source of inner meaning, has become institutionalized and disconnected from its mystical roots. The result is a growing number of individuals for whom traditional religion no longer offers a viable path to self-understanding. However, Jung does not advocate for a return to dogma. Rather, he believes that religion needs to be reinterpreted psychologically. Religious myths and rituals, when understood symbolically, can aid in the individuation process by helping people engage with the archetypes within their own psyche. In contrast to Western rationalism, Jung admired aspects of Eastern spirituality, particularly Indian philosophy and Buddhism, for their introspective approaches and emphasis on inner experience. Nonetheless, he cautioned against uncritically adopting Eastern practices, arguing that Western individuals must find their own path, rooted in their unique cultural and psychological heritage. The therapeutic process. Jung also delves into the practice of psychotherapy, offering reflections on the roles of both analyst and patient. He believed that therapy is not just about curing symptoms, but facilitating personal transformation. The goal is not to conform to social norms or eliminate discomfort, but to help the individual become whole. He emphasized the importance of the therapeutic relationship as a dynamic interplay of two personalities. The analyst must not remain detached or superior, but engage honestly and empathetically. Jung coined the term transference to describe the projection of unconscious contents onto the therapist, a concept he shared with Freud, though Jung gave it a broader spiritual and symbolic interpretation. He also warned that the therapist must undergo their own psychological development, what Jung called the analyst's individuation, to be effective. Without self-awareness, the therapist risks projecting their own unresolved issues onto the patient. The integration of the shadow. One of Jung's most influential ideas discussed in the book is the concept of the shadow, the unconscious aspects of the self that are repressed or denied because they are considered undesirable or threatening. The shadow includes both personal traits, like selfishness or anger, and collective aspects of evil and chaos. Jung believed that integrating the shadow is essential for personal growth. This does not mean acting out destructive impulses, but acknowledging and owning them so they can be consciously directed. Suppressing the shadow leads to psychological projection and moral hypocrisy, while confronting it leads to greater self-knowledge and balance. In modern society, where appearances and social conformity often take precedence, the shadow is frequently disowned. Jung saw this as a major cause of neurosis, anxiety, and the loss of authentic individuality. Toward wholeness, individuation, and the self. The ultimate goal of Jung's psychology, as emphasized throughout Modern Man in Search of a Soul, is the process of individuation. This is the journey of integrating the ego with the unconscious, including the shadow, the anima animus, the inner feminine or masculine, and ultimately the self, the totality of the psyche and the archetype of wholeness. Individuation is not narcissistic self-absorption. Rather, it involves a deep ethical and spiritual commitment to truth, responsibility, and inner harmony. Jung saw this process as the modern equivalent of religious initiation or alchemical transformation. He even borrowed symbols from alchemy to describe the stages of psychic development. While individuation is a lifelong endeavor, Jung maintained that even partial progress brings a sense of meaning and fulfillment. It leads to a more centered, authentic life in which the individual can live creatively and contribute meaningfully to society. Conclusion. Modern Man in Search of a Soul remains a powerful and timely exploration of the human psyche. Jung's insights into dreams, symbols, religion, and the unconscious offer a profound critique of modern alienation and a hopeful path towards psychological and spiritual renewal. Rather than prescribing a rigid system, Jung invites readers to engage in a personal journey of discovery and integration. In a world still grappling with identity crises, mental health struggles, and existential doubt, Jung's message continues to resonate. The search for the soul is not outdated. It is more necessary than ever.